Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America, where each episode we bring you a brand new interview with one of the film industry's top directors, conducted by one of their peers. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on Google Play Music, iTunes, Stitcher, or on our SoundCloud page at soundcloud.com/thedirectorscut. This episode features director Ewan McGregor's new film, American Pastoral. Based on the Pulitzer Prize-winning Phillip Roth novel, the film follows Seymour Swede Levov, a successful businessman and former high school athlete who lives an idyllic life with his wife, a former beauty queen, and his beloved teenage daughter. When a stunning act of violence is blamed on Swede's missing daughter, he must confront the realities of her radical political activism as he searches for her. Following a recent membership screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Mr. McGregor discussed the challenges of making American Pastoral with director Mike Mills, who directed Mr. McGregor in the 2010 film Beginners. In the conversation, Mr. McGregor describes holding private rehearsals on set with only his actors, how he approached directing the other actors while performing opposite them in the same scene, and how the lessons he learned as an actor from other directors like Mr. Mills have informed his own directorial process.
He wants you there. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I had the great joy of directing Ewan in a film called Beginners, and I can just tell you that everyone in the world falls in love with him in a very genuine way. Dogs, people, everyone. And I did too. And I'm so honored that you asked me to do this, and I'm so proud of you, I have to say.
Thank you very much.
So I'm going to ask them some questions, we have a conversation. Then they said not to do Q&A with you all, but we said, let's do it. Yeah. No one, directors don't take direction very well. So we thought it'd be fun, right, to open it up a little bit at the end. So we're going to do that. The thing that struck me the most, well, there's a few things, but your filmmaking is just like so mature feeling and so restrained, and like so many scenes you cover just with one shot. And it had like a Edward Hopper kind of painterly thing to me, and it really kicked in once Mary left to me. The filmmaking got so strong, and there's that one scene where Jennifer Connelly's saying, "Bring her back." What's she saying? "I want her back."
Yeah, I want her to come home now. No.
It just that was such a gorgeous shot. How did you get such a mature filmmaking style so quickly?
Well, I think it's the kind of cinema that I love. It's the kind of cinema that I thought was demanded by the story, by the script. I couldn't really see it any other way. I learned a lot. I mean, but the first big decision, of course, is who's going to shoot it for you, who's going to be your DP. And I had a list of 3 people, 2 of whom I'd worked with before, one of those persons twice, and one of those directors I had worked with on a film that was directed by the actor that I was in. You could be able to work that was out. And then Martin, who I had never worked with before, and Martin Ruhr is the cinematographer of this film. And I'd seen and loved some of the films that he made. He made Control with Anton Corbijn and The American, and but it was a small film that he made. It was an independent British film that he made called Harry Brown, starring Michael Caine, and it was a very cute idea about an old age pensioner who turns vigilante and takes on the yobbos in his council estate that he lives in. And the very first shot of that movie is a handheld iPhone shot with somebody on a scooter and someone shot. And then we go into the bedroom of Michael Caine, who we haven't met yet. And there's probably about 8 or 9 shots. There's a shot of Michael waking up, rolling over, and we see what he's looking at on the side cabinet. There's a little picture of a woman who's not in his bed. And there's some pills, and then we see him's face, and then we're under the bed and his feet come into shot, and then we're in the kitchen as he's making eggs, and then there's 2 shots as he's eating alone in a kitchen. And by the end of these 6 or 7 or 8 shots. I felt like I knew everything I needed to know about this character, and so I felt like at that point, this is the guy I need. I want somebody that's storytelling like this, because I'm a beginner, and I've been thinking in shots for 25 years, acting for them, but I've been thinking towards the camera and not from behind it. So I needed somebody that was going to be a great storyteller visually for me, and then also somebody I've also witnessed, sadly, I guess, on set with some first-time directors where they fall out with the DP because of their inexperience and their, you're necessarily going to say some stupid things as a first-time director, and DPs sometimes don't take, I don't know, I've just seen that relationship go south, and it's very uncomfortable for the actors, and I just couldn't risk that because I was going to be stepping out in front of this person's camera. So I felt when I met Martin that he was going to be a perfect partner, and it turned out exactly to be that, a real buddy and a real, we really made this film together, and that was wonderful. And I suppose how we came up with the shots was we spent 10 days of the prep working it out. I didn't want to storyboard because I've never really enjoyed seeing storyboards on set. I don't like the sort of nature of crossing them out, and it feels to me a bit like painting by numbers. I can understand why they might be important for action sequences and what have you, but for an acting scene, to see storyboards always robs the experience of the magic to me as an actor. So I didn't really want to do that, but I did not want to not have any idea of what I was doing. So having found all the locations, and of course when you're looking at locations, you're imagining the scene playing out in there. That helps you to choose them, doesn't it? So I had a sort of sense of how the scenes might play, and we just sat with a whiteboard, and I drew up every like a floor plan of this set of this or the location, and then literally would say, okay, I imagine myself standing in the doorway and Dakota's sitting in the window, and I can see that I might go to the bed and she might join me, and then I'll leave. And so we would then set about thinking about the shots. How do we want the camera to move? Do we want it still? Do we want French overs or this overs or what? We would make decisions really based on this idea of the blocking, and then I would. Sorry, this is a very, very long answer.
Yes.
But I was always with the understanding that this blocking was just my idea, and of course, because it's my idea, it doesn't have the input of the other people in the scene. And so, when we got to set, I would always clear the set and rehearse alone with the actors, which was quite amusing at first because the first would call out director, actor, rehearsal, everyone take 5, go and get coffee. And me and Jennifer would walk on the set and close the door, and there would just be the two of us, We sort of snigger like we were getting away with something. And then we would start with my idea. I'd always say, this is what I thought it might be. Uh-huh. And then we would try it. And if it worked, great, we would just shoot it like that. And if it didn't, we would spend as long as it took to find the scene together. And I really mean that, together, and then, but because we'd gone through the process, Martin and I, we had this. We knew we knew how the scene should feel. If it was going to be a scene with lots of coverage that we needed, when the scene was in a place in the story where we wanted a bit of pace, then we would already have that knowledge. Or if it was going to be in one, we would sort of have that feeling, and that's how we came about it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I can imagine you. Having so much acting experience, having instincts about how to block it when you're alone with your DP, and that's like, I would never have that. So that's kind of fascinating to hear. Right. But then, like, how often did it change, or how often did it stay what your intuition thought it might be?
I mean, I don't really remember. It's probably as often as it worked, it didn't.
Right.
I mean, quite a lot of it, and it also changed with the actors. Some actors want to be more involved, or would change with the Dakota, for instance, was very happy with what I'd imagined.
Yeah.
And it would work, and she's the kind of actor that would make it work. And then, but in the scene where we're outside the train station, and it was funny. It was written in the script that she run away from me at that point, halfway through that scene where the cop comes up behind her and tells us about the curfew. It was a script direction that she runs away from the Swede, and he runs and grabs her in the rain and turns around, and the policeman comes up behind them. And she said, first of all, it was really raining, and it was going to make it complicated, and we didn't have very much time, and it was like we're going to have to dry our hair between every take, and so sometimes these things affect how we decide to block it. But she just said, look, this is the only time in the movie where I tell you the truth. I'm telling you why I'm so angry. I'm telling you what I'm fighting for and against. Why would I at this point run away from you?
Right.
And don't forget that later. Yeah. And I had to say I agreed with her. I went, or at least I didn't have an answer. I went, I don't know. So we just totally changed that to keep it underneath the parapet, and that was an absolute example of the actor's input. Right. Creating the scene.
Right. I love the idea of you guys, just you and Jennifer Connelly alone in a room together, the crew locked out on the other side of the door.
Yeah.
That sounds dreamy. Not because she's a beautiful woman, because just creatively. It sounds like you have so much freedom and such privacy, and sets her off in such a unionized public space.
No, it's good. I learned it, I have to say, right from the word go. Danny Boyle rehearses like that. And with Danny, we would always have had a week's rehearsal, like full week's rehearsal as actors. And then for Shallow Grave, that involved living together. And it wasn't a week where he was also doing scouts and camera tests and stuff. And I didn't have that luxury because our actors came a week before. And it's sort of the way I asked for it to be.
Right.
Because I didn't know exactly. I knew that's how we would get there as actors on set. I didn't want to do like a week's blocking rehearsals with the actors. I don't know why, I just didn't. So we didn't. We had like evenings, table reading and discussing scenes during the week of camera tests, of which we had many for old age makeup and young makeup and blah, blah, blah. And then we had a sort of solid morning's rehearsal on the final Friday in the house, because the house was the first thing that we shot. The sequence was... we shot in the house for 10 days first. Mm-hmm. So I had the luxury of like rehearsing all the scenes that happen in the house, in situ in the house, which was already dressed and ready to go. And
when you say rehearse, like how deep into it are you doing the script exactly, or you're playing around, or?
No, we would on our feet. Mm-hmm. We would get on our feet, and we pretty much, the scenes weren't long enough for people not to, after 2 or 3 goes at it, people had their scripts down on the settee or whatever, and we were rehearsing the scene. We were doing blocking rehearsals,
right? And it sounds like
making decisions, I guess, about how the scene would then be played out. But then when we came to those scenes again, when we shot them, we didn't forgo the rehearsal. We still rehearsed again,
right?
And that was just something that I believed in, and I'd learned from experience. It's helpful. It's absolutely the best way to get the best work from your actors, and I know that because I am one, and I won't give you my best work because I'm not inspired enough if I walk on set and the first assistant shows me a tape mark on the floor and says that's where you're standing, because my answer is always like, how do you know? When you're approaching your first movie, as many of you here will have done, it's amazing how many people start to give you advice about directing your first movie.
It's like when you're pregnant.
Right,
when your
right.
wife's pregnant. Yeah.
Lots of directors and lots of people who've never directed anything give you advice. But one director, who's a friend of mine, someone I know, said to me, he said, yes, just get it blocked out and get everything organized, get the cameras in place, get it all locked down before the actors get on set, so they can't fuck it up. And I said, I am an actor. What are you talking about? It's sort of the opposite way of that I wanted to do it. You know what I mean? Really?
Yeah. So so you rehearse it, and then you rehearse it again, like weeks later, perhaps, just to keep it warm, or what happens in that second rehearsal? Because
you're we did this in beginners as well. It's just because you're just about to shoot it, and you have something will be different, whether it's the lighting or. The set wasn't dressed when you were there the last time. Mm-hmm. You need to explore the scene as an actor, and very often you find the detail of the scene then when there's magazines on the table, when there's coffee in the jug, when you can actually explore how you're really going to do it,
right.
And it's just always best to do that alone with the director, because then it's just private, and then you're really allowing the actors to explore. We can't do our best work being watched by the crew. It's I don't know, it's a sort of miscomprehension that we're actors and we just love to show off to everybody. I mean, partly that might be true, but when we're working and putting a scene together, it's like with the B-roll people, the making of people. How can you rehearse with these guys filming you? Like, it's being filmed and we're actors, and so we're not going to try stuff that's not going to work. And part of rehearsing is trying stuff that doesn't work,
right?
And feeling safe to do so. And that's best done alone, I think, with the director.
I mean, it's interesting how much you're informed, obviously, by your long acting career when you're coming to this, and everything you're saying is like very actor friendly. Like, what did anything surprise you when you became the director, or and also in your head on the shoot day, how do you toggle back and forth between the director and the actor?
Yeah,
But the surprise question first. I'm really curious.
Well, my fear was that I would be of no use. You know, that I wouldn't have the words, that I wouldn't have anything to, that I might not know what to say. I mean, I don't know. I guess I've seen that in the eyes of many first-time directors. You know, I'll be much more gentle with the next one I work with for sure. But I never wanted that to happen, and I also never wanted to give the note for the sake of giving the note, you know?
Right.
Because I know what that feels like as an actor too. So I suppose the surprising thing was, in actual fact, how it became, it's the thing I've always known. I mean, I love acting, and I love actors, and I love, you know, taking words and making it something that we can watch and feel from, you know? Mm-hmm. So that, of course, came quite naturally. Mm-hmm. I mean, the giving of the note to your acting partner is not a natural situation. It's a sort of big no-no. And I would never do that as an actor. I would never, ever dream of telling the other actor what to do, because clearly that is just an instruction to them about something that doesn't work for me.
Right.
It's a selfish thing to do. It's a very ungenerous thing to do, and I would never do it. But in this situation, I had to do it. It was my job also to do it. So I had to find a way in which to direct the actors so it didn't feel like they were being judged by me.
Right.
And I also had an incredibly proficient and skilled cast that I never was really giving notes based on like judgment. It was really much more about steering the scene, you know, as a conductor might a piece of music, like the piece of music is being played by the orchestra, and the people in the orchestra can play the oboe and the viola better than me, but I want the music to feel like my interpretation of the piece of music. So it was much more that kind of direction, really. I guess other than with the children, with the young girl, Ocean, who played Mary as a little girl. Of course, when you're directing children, it is much more about how you want things done, and with the stutter, making sure sometimes the stutter wouldn't ring true, and then you would have to find another word for her to stutter on, or the right sound or something. Right. Then it became a bit more, but not really with my cast.
So like, and I can imagine that your actors are so great, and like one of the scenes that really blew me away is Jennifer Connelly in the hospital when she's saying, "How did I end up here?" and that long sort of story of her life, and I believe it's in one sort of track-in shot.
Yeah, a lot of it, yeah.
So like in a scene like that is so intimate and so soft, and what she's getting to as an actor is just so vulnerable and soft and open. And she's looking at you, and you're both the husband and the director. Mm-hmm. That seems like a challenge. Like, how did you pull that off? Because
it wasn't by then, you see, because by then we'd been shooting for some time by then, and so I think it just becomes very inclusive. I would like to think. I think the actors. I mean, I've heard them say in this situation that they felt. I hope they're not just being polite because I'm sitting there, but I think it became quite inclusive and satisfying artistically and creatively because. You know, I am an actor, and I was in the scene with them, and I felt, you know, when you asked about, you know, splitting yourself, I never almost felt like I did really, because I would have the conversation with the actors, and then just do the scene with them, as opposed to having the conversation and walk away behind a monitor with away from them.
Right.
I had this sort of luxury of being in it.
Yeah.
And I found that the days where I didn't direct, I had 3 days at the end of the schedule where I didn't direct at all, like the funeral scene and the reunion scenes I'm not in, and those were spread over 3 days, and they were our final 3 days. And I found that to be almost, because I'd got used to also the routine of acting and directing at the same time, and I found that to be the trickiest days, really, you know.
So it sounds like the being in the scene added to the intimacy you had with the actors and like your shared turf.
Yeah,
instead of a division.
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I really
I got to
don't
start
think,
acting, clearly.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I do think it's not a bad idea. I'm not joking. For all of you, for anyone. Yeah. I did a long time ago in Britain. I did some work with directors at the film school in Beaconsfield, and I went and I just worked with directors, and they made them act.
Yeah.
And I think it's not a bad idea to just know what it feels like. And the film I made with Rodrigo Garcia recently, Last Days in the Desert, I had scenes where I was playing two characters in that movie. And my good friend Nash Edgerton, who's a great filmmaker and stunt coordinator and stunt man, and he was doing our stunt arranging for the film. But he also asked him to play opposite me when I was doing the scenes with myself, if you know what I mean. So in the film, I was playing Jesus and the devil. And so I would start by, first of all, I rehearsed with him. There were some very long scenes, and I'd sit at night with him, and he put in all this effort and work learning both parts with me, and I learned both parts, obviously. And so I would play Jesus, and he would play the devil, and I was playing it to him. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes they were over his shoulder, sometimes not. And then we would swap places and costume or whatever. And now I was the devil, and he'd be Jesus, and we would shoot the scene again. Mm-hmm. And he was putting in all this effort. And I said to him, one night, I feel really bad because
you're going to get cut out.
You're doing all this work, and none of it's going to be seen.
Yeah.
And he said, no. He said, listen, it's perfect for me because I really want to know what it's like to act. For my directing. And so he did all this effort, and I really appreciated that he was put himself on the line like that.
Yeah. So coming from such a felt, inclusive actor's perspective, your film is still like so visually rigorous and so beautifully lit and so poised. Mm-hmm. It's not like a messy film at all, or like how that. Again, it's very striking, especially if you're staying so in the scene, you're staying so with the other actors. How did you maintain the sort of visual rigor of your filmmaking?
Partly because of that work that we did in the prep with Martin and I. I think partly because that's how I like to be shot, maybe. Uh-huh. Maybe that's how it feels, what it feels like.
What does that mean?
It's very satisfying to have the camera on you, and you know where it is, and it's there, and you know that your job is you're the storyteller. When the camera's flying around and you don't know quite where it's at, and when you feel that the camera is being given the job of storytelling,
right,
it's less satisfying as an actor.
Right, that makes sense.
And so maybe it reflects how I like to be shot.
Yeah.
But also the films that I like, you know, we shot like this in Beginners, especially with the Father story with Christopher Plummer and I. This classic, beautiful frames, and where they really were, and films like I was inspired by Leviathan, the Russian movie, Force Majeure is another film, The Graduate, where the camera's
a little wider.
Yeah, where the Graduate's more interesting because often there's a lot of they played with things blocking the image, and sometimes then an actor would reveal himself from behind a shoulder or something in the foreground. But I couldn't be as brave as any of those films I mentioned in a way, because I felt like the story demanded. I did do close-ups, I did do coverage on actors, but I did choose to make some of the scenes play in one shot.
I feel like almost all your most dramatic, most key, most pivotal things, which most people cover a lot, at least you ended up with one shot. A lot of them, or very minimal coverage.
Yeah,
which is very beautiful and gave a lot of space for the performance, and also the frames are so beautiful and did remind me of like sort of classic American 70s sort of filmmaking.
Right. I watched it this afternoon with my little girl. One of my kids, Esther, hadn't seen the film, and we watched it this afternoon. And it reminded me of the films I used to watch when I was a kid, like much older films from the 30s and 40s maybe. Old romantic Hollywood movies and I was thinking, because there is one scene in the film where we built a set. There were very few sets built, and I won't tell you what they all were because it doesn't matter. But one of them was just we built a 3-sided set, and it was slightly raised, and it was in the corner of a studio where we were shooting some other stuff. And when we filmed it, it looked like old Hollywood. It just looked like, it was literally a room with a ceiling and 3 walls, and then all the crew standing out where the 4th wall should be. It just felt really old-fashioned. And I was thinking about that this afternoon as I was watching the film, that inspiration when I was a child. I was just obsessed with old black and white movies, be it from Hollywood or Ealing comedies or whatever, and romantic movies mainly, I think. And there's something about this that reminded me of that today for the first time. Films like The Philadelphia Story or Harvey or something, where they are sort of theatrical in a way, and the camera's mainly on one axis because there's nothing behind the camera. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think your lighting was like that. It's very sort of down with a sort of a soft key, and people very central, and it's very sort of monolithic in a great way that I thought was, again, like very brave, I thought, for a first-time director to be that like restricted in a way.
Yeah.
I want to ask how your experiences with other directors sort of influence you. You've met so many amazing directors, and have you been like putting stuff in your toolbox all these years to apply here, or did you end up just sort of using your intuition more? I feel like you're working with you. I know how intuitive you are ultimately. Like you're an analytic person, but when it comes to the day, it's like your heart and soul is what speaks. Was that at play, or how much did all the directors you worked with influence how you worked?
I think it's got to be totally all of them. I mean, for good and bad, I think, and it's very much about how it feels. I think in terms of what kind of director you're going to be, you don't know until you're there. And I mean, in prep and certainly on set, I think the directing is so much about character. It's really, the favorite people that I've worked with, and my whole work totally differently, Yeah. And I've worked with people that might seem to be incredibly restrictive, and everything I'm not talking about tonight. I can think of a couple of people I've worked with that are very like that, but still I loved working with them because of their character or their soul or something. And so it's difficult techniques I picked up, like I say, with Danny and the rehearsals, because that's what works best. And you did that, and that's what works best. I just know that gets the best work out of people. I got asked yesterday at a screening if I got pushback about rehearsing that way. And I said, well, no, but I said, but also if you didn't rehearse that way, how would anyone know what we were shooting? Mm-hmm. Like, how can you know what you're shooting if you don't rehearse? Mm-hmm. I don't understand. So, and then I loved it. I loved the position I was in because I've wanted to do it for so long. Mm-hmm. And I've also always sort of felt like a filmmaker as an actor. I like to know what the crew are doing. There's part of my brain that's very aware if the focus puller's on a very long lens and with a small depth of field. And as an actor, I want to be involved in the emotional side of my character's journey and the technical side of making sure that emotional journey is on film and usable at the end of the day. And so I've always felt sort of interested, and I'll speak to DPs and I'll speak to designers.
You come in and you kiss everybody on the set. It's very sweetly. You know everyone's name like right away, and I can imagine you have a consciousness of the set that I can imagine easily turning into a director. I just got told we have just a little bit time left, and we said we would ask questions. Does anybody have Wow, you win. Did you guys hear the question? From the time he read the script to the time he watched it with an audience for the first time, how much was it what you thought it was going to be? Like from the initial thing? That's a good question.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I can be honest. On the very last day of the sound mix, the second last day of the sound mix, we watched the whole movie, and from start to finish, to allow ourselves the Friday, which was my last day on the movie, to work any notes that we had. And I sat on that Thursday and I watched the movie, and I had a big, big smile on my face at the end, because I really felt, there it is. That's the film I wanted to make. I was never compromised into like cutting stuff I loved or putting stuff in I didn't like, or I was supported all the way, and I really, there's always going to be something. There's always going to be a thing or a sound or something that if I'd only, and there's a couple of things in it, but really, I would say 97% of the movie is the one I wanted to make, and I consider that to be pretty good. That's
super
pretty good.
Super good. Yes. So her question is, it really moved her in the relationship at the time, but what was it that made you want to make the movie, and the movie had so much heart, and how did you connect to that maybe?
Well, I think the truth is that I've got 4 daughters, and I had an opportunity to make a film about a daddy and his girl, and I could see lots of things in the script I haven't suffered anything like the Swede and Mary go through, but I've had there's things in my life that I can see. What my eldest daughter Clara was probably 15 or 16 when I first read the script, and so somewhere in my mind I must have been readying myself for her leaving leaving home, and that's a loss, and this is a story about a father losing his daughter, and so maybe that's why I was so locked into it to begin with. And of course now she's in her 3rd year at university. I've been through it, and but I think it's that. I think that, and the family. There was so many familiar things in it to me. I've been in the kitchen between my wife and my daughter trying to keep the peace. I've learned to just side with my wife. Whatever. But I don't know. There was a lot. And also I felt for them. I felt for these people. I felt for these characters really hard when I read the script. And one of the things that I would say that I sort of felt about the amazing people that I got to make the film with was Dan Clancy, the production designer, Lindsay McKay, the costume designer, Judy Chin, the makeup designer, Jason Sika did our hair, Martin Rua. They managed to create a period in the film without it becoming like a barrier between us and these people. And I was really proud. I'm really proud of that. I think that, that was something I really wanted, for the period always to be right, but not for it to be I didn't want it ever to look like a period movie, really. And because I wanted to feel for these people the way I felt for them when I read it. And they did an amazing job at that, with the budget we had, and the challenges we had with locations and streets and exteriors, and trying to make a street 1954 one minute and 1973 the next.
Yeah, I think that compassion came across in your performance and the whole filmmaking. Should we do another question? Let's go far back. Yeah, you please. How did you do your casting, and what was your budget? That's a personal question. The budget part. I'll defend you on that. You don't have to answer.
I don't have to answer the budget.
I think people who paid for it would be angry at you. I could tell you as a director.
Yeah. We had $140 million. The casting was an amazing. I loved that process very much. I was very, very fortunate to have Jennifer Connelly and Dakota, who'd been cast with me when I first joined the project to play the Swede, 3 years before we got on set. And my first job as director was to go and meet. I'd met Dakota once because I was going to be playing her dad, and I arranged to meet her in New York, and we had coffee and just to say hello to each other, really. And then Jennifer I'd never met. And Jennifer, in fact, had been attached to this film over 10 years ago in its very first iteration when it didn't happen, and then came back to it again when I joined in Dakota. So my first job was to go and meet both of those actors and ask them if they'd kindly stay, now that I was directing it, and they didn't have. I was a total unknown quantity as a director, so they'd have been in their rights to not stay. But Thank God they did. And then the rest of the casting, Molly Parker was also cast as the doctor. And I met Molly and I really liked her. I didn't feel any need to uncast her. She's brilliant. And then everyone else, I worked with Trish Woods and Deb Aquila, and we just had great actors who were happy to be part of it. David Strathern, Peter Regan had been in a film with my Uncle Dennis in the 80s, Local Hero. And he'd been part of my life in a way. I didn't know Peter socially, personally, but that film was a big deal to me when I was growing up because my uncle was in the movie, and I used to go to where they shot it on that beach. And so when Peter Regan's name came up, I couldn't see anyone else for Lou. The children, Rita was a difficult part to cast because I really felt I read with a lot. I did auditions with a lot of Ritas and really brilliant actors, some really good ones, and I never felt that I met her. I never felt that she'd walked in the room. I had this sort of slight hunger left over, like I was waiting. I hadn't found her, and we were getting quite late on the day, and I could feel there was a sort of pressure to cast. You've got to cast someone eventually, and we had this meeting. Gary Lucchese, who's here, a producer, Tom Rosenberg, and I met in Lakeshore's office and reviewed some of the favorite auditions that I'd done with some of our favorite Ritas. And I felt at that point I was very close to casting the wrong person because I felt like we should get on with it. And then just at that point, Trish just put in a DVD and she went, "Oh, well, there's this girl." And she hit and she'd been waiting because Valerie was doing a film in Vancouver, and she'd sent a first self-tape in with, she had pink hair in this piece that she was doing. And Trish very cleverly said, "Oh, do it again, just get a wig or something, don't have pink hair. Just in case, do you want everyone to be able to not be challenged by something that isn't Rita with like pink hair?" And so she'd been waiting for the second go. And oh my God, as soon as she started, I went, "Well, that's her there. That's her." So we cast her without ever having met. Yeah. Uzo was brilliant idea. I think it's true that Vicky was probably written as a slightly older woman, but as soon as I was given somebody mentioned Uzo, I suddenly thought it really worked. It worked. I like the idea that they maybe grew up together. She probably was working in the factory for Lou when she was a kid, probably 11 or 12. And I would have been around her all my life. So there's a sort of brother-sisterly thing there, which I really liked, having a younger Vicky. Yeah. We could go on and on. But it's really... but in Toronto, when we premiered the film and I had the honor of standing out on stage for the first time in my life, introducing a cast onto the stage, I did take a little look over to my right and go... Hell, look at that. Look at that lineup, It's quite a cast, isn't it? I was very lucky. I was a lucky boy.
This is fun. Should we do one more? I know we're a little late. Let's do one more. Okay, good. He just said yes. How about back there, since we're getting deeper? Did you always want to use narration, or is that something you came to?
Yes, it's absolutely the structure of... it's an odd structure in the book in that Phillip Roth writes in his novel in three very clear sections. And the first section is all Nathan Zuckerman and about his life, his recollections of the time. He's at the reunion. He goes into when he first met, he talks about the Swede when he was, as he recalls him as a young man, and then he had a meeting with him when the Swede was older, and then when he starts to write the story of the Swede's life at the end of that first section, the second and third sections of the novel are, I assume, what Nathan Zuckerman has written. So it's an interesting concept because the story that we are told in the novel is Nathan Zuckerman's fantasy of what the Swede's life was. He must have got some details from his brother and the research that a novelist would do. But at the same time, it was interesting to me that he was telling us the story. And does he know that Mary asked her daddy to kiss her in a car? Or does he know that she saw the monk burning? I don't know. Maybe that's for us all to decide. But I like the idea of keeping him, and I like the idea of bringing him back at the end at the funeral, which doesn't happen in the novel. but I felt like it was really a beautiful thing to bookend our story with the narrator. I think it's traditional. It seems to work very well in this. I like that Nathan stops telling us the story, and that could be the end of the film, but for the little coda when Mary arrives back at the funeral. I like that. And there was more voiceover throughout the movie from Nathan that I removed. I just felt like he belonged at the beginning and end, and we didn't need to be reminded of him in the middle of the film somehow.
We were talking earlier, you told me a really interesting thing about how you hadn't read the book for a while because you were cast in the movie and you were waiting to see if it came about. And then after really getting into the influence that the actual novel had onto you and how it impacted how you wanted the characters to come across at the end, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. I think what I got, you're right, I didn't read the novel because I was just busy. I'm a busy actor, and I was cast in it, and I loved the script, and I was just waiting to know when we were going to shoot. There's a sort of necessary preparation for a part, and reading the novel was very much part of that for me, but I didn't want to do it like 3 years before we started shooting the film because I wouldn't remember things. So I was just waiting, and then of course when I started thinking that I should direct the film, I started really living in his book, and I became the director, and then from that point I had 9 months till we shot. And I just, every day I was reading, there's a brilliant recording of the book by Ron Silver. And if I was driving, I had Ron reading me the story. If I was running, I had Ron reading me the story. I sort of soaked it up. And I suppose, I never felt like John Romano had missed anything I didn't feel like I wasn't looking for any other bits to go in the film. I really believed in the adaptation that John had written. But I wanted the film to feel like I wanted it not just for us to have borrowed Phillip Roth's story. I wanted it to be representative of his book, and so I had to find his voice or his thoughts. And what I ended up feeling strongly about was the fact that he presents so many themes and ideas in the book, writing about this family and writing about America at that time. And within all those themes, he writes so many different arguments and points of view. And I never felt like, because I was living in it, 9 months is a long time to be reading and listening to the one story, but I always felt like every time I listened to a chapter or read a chapter, I was siding with somebody different. I was thinking, Dr. Sheila's got a point. Maybe that's right. And the next time I was just thinking, Sheila's just a jealous character and she fancies the Swede. And, I just never... And he never told me what to think. So that's what I tried to do with the film, with the characters, was to understand them. I wanted to present Mary and understand maybe why she does what she does. And I think Roth's giving us millions of ideas about what that might be, but I give you some, and I try to let you make your own mind up. And Dawn, you could argue in the novel, is sort of somewhat written off in the end because of the facelift and the affair. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to sort of somehow try and understand her. Dawn survives Mary in a way that the Swede doesn't. You could argue that she's got more strength than the Swede in a way because he's so stuck in his ways, and he doesn't survive Mary, So that was that was my Rothianness, I suppose, if there was any that I gleaned from the book.
Yeah, I love the complexity and openness of everyone at the end, and there wasn't any villains and heroes, really. That was really sweet.
Right.
Okay, I know our DGA friend is freaking out, but let's just do one more question. Come on. How about way in the back? I know you're asking, I'm sorry, but
right down the front.
But come on, the people in the back are less empowered.
They've all got buses to go. No, here, look, you can go, because...
Well, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, it's my fault.
You can ask me afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay. I tried to be careful not to... I spoke to Ben Affleck, who I've known a little tiny bit, and because he directed himself in 3 movies at that point, 4 now, I think. And I asked him about that. I watched also Don Cheadle when I was on the set of Miles Ahead. I was working with Don when he was playing Miles Davis and directing me opposite him. So I learned a lot by watching Don. And but Ben's advice was just to be careful not to... he said you'll undercover yourself because the time will be ticking away. You'll be losing the light, and the first thing you'll do is okay, that's enough on me. Let's turn the camera around or whatever, or move on. And he said, if you're going to play the part, make sure that you don't end up in the edit room with not enough of you as that part, And so I did bear that in mind, and I didn't. It's also a bit embarrassing in front of you're standing there in front of Jennifer or Dakota, and you're like, okay, just one more me, one more, come on. In actual fact, come a bit closer, just a bit. It's a little, it's a bit embarrassing. So, but I found what happened with me wasn't in the set, but in the edit. I undercovered myself in the edit a bit, especially in the last act of the film. And I had a couple of people see the film who said, you want to be careful. The Swede's not present enough at the end of the film. And I went through with Melissa Kent, our brilliant editor, and we just did a pass, really from the last half of the film on the Swede. Just making sure. And we ended a couple of scenes on me that we hadn't done before, and we put in, I think, 2 close-ups that we hadn't used before, and it just slightly upped the ante and put Swede more in the middle of the story at the end, because you just tempted not to do it, I guess, because through embarrassment or whatever. But that was that's how I did it, and I just think in terms of playing him. Because I had that 9 months of preparation where I only thought about American Pastoral. I mean, I had 18 months where I only thought about American Pastoral. But in that 9 months of preparation, I was dreaming the movie, and sharing that with my creative people that I was making the film with. And at the middle of all of those thoughts and daydreams and, decisions was the Swede, because he's in most of the scenes. So I just felt like I was never more prepared to play somebody, because I'd been thinking about him for so much. And also I just felt like when I first read it, I just knew who I wanted him to be. So it wasn't a challenge somehow in a way to play him. It wasn't.
Well,
thank you very much.
Give a really huge round of applause to Ewan and his directorial debut.
Thanks for coming. Thanks to Mike Mills for asking me the questions.
Yeah.
We hope you have enjoyed this DGA Q&A. Check out past episodes of the podcast by subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts or at dga.org/podcast. We'll have more episodes for you next week, so stay tuned. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to The Director's Cut on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, or our SoundCloud page so you won't miss an episode. If you are enjoying the podcast, please leave us a review. We'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks for listening, and have a great week. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Wally.